I intend, as President of the United States, to sign an executive order on day one, directing the Department of Justice and the U.S. Marshals to transfer the approximately 200,000 Bitcoin held by the U.S. government to the United States Treasury, where it will be held as a strategic asset. On day one as president, I will sign another executive order directing the U.S. Treasury to purchase 550 Bitcoin daily until the U.S. has built a reserve of at least 4 million Bitcoins. And a position of dominance that no other country will be able to usurp. Our nation holds approximately 19% of global gold reserves. This policy will give us about the same proportion of total Bitcoin. The cascading impact from these actions will eventually move Bitcoin to a valuation of hundreds of trillions of dollars. On day one as president, I will sign also an executive order directing the IRS to issue public guidelines that all transactions between Bitcoin and the US dollar are unreportable transactions.
If crypto is going to define the future, I want to be mined, minted, and made in the USA. It's going to be. It's not going to be made anywhere else. On day one, I will fire Gary Gensler. Whoa. Appoint a new SEC chairman who believes America should build the future, not block the future, which is what they're doing. I am announcing that if I am elected, it will be the policy of my administration, United States of America, to keep 100% of all the Bitcoin the U.S. government currently holds or acquires into the future. As we implement these reforms, Bitcoin and crypto will grow our economy, cement American financial dominance, and strengthen our entire country.
That was basically it. That was the speech. Now, here's my thoughts on this. Absolute fumbling of the bag short term, right? This is not a good speech in terms of driving attention. RFK has won that conversation as far as I'm concerned. RFK went on stage, even though he's got no chance of winning, as you know, from what I understand. He turned around and he said, you know, on day one, I'm going to issue an executive order and it's going to instruct the Treasury to buy 550 Bitcoin a day until we have a national reserve of 4 million Bitcoin, which is 8,000 days of purchasing, which, you know, complete and utter bullshit because it's never going to happen with him winning. But at the same time, it's great headlines. Bitcoiners love it. It's something to talk about. So it was done, right? RFK won that conversation. RFK had done an amazing job at getting into the the mind state of Bitcoiners, right? I don't expect RFK to be a Bitcoiner. I don't expect President Donald Trump to be a Bitcoiner. I don't expect Kamala Harris to be a Bitcoiner. I don't expect anyone to truly be a Bitcoiner. What I expect from these people is that the people advising them are Bitcoiners. That's what I expect. That's what I expect my Bitcoin donations, and I haven't donated to the campaign because I'm British, but I expect the Bitcoin donations to at least buy that. I expect them to buy people that understand Bitcoin in the advisory team. So RFK was amazing. He won the show. He won the whole Bitcoin conference. This speech is going to go down, President Donald Trump's speech is going to go down as the most historic presidential speech at a Bitcoin event because it was the first one. However, it is a fumbling of the bag because what he should have done, if Cynthia Lummis, who has just announced this bill to create a Bitcoin strategic reserve and purchase 1 million Bitcoin worth $68 billion. Now that's come. What he should have said right at the end of his speech is brought her up on stage and announced it then, but they didn't do that. So it's a fumbling of the bag. Now, let me give you my perspective as a professional investor and thinking long term on this. This is if he had announced that we're going to go and buy 551 Bitcoin, basically one upping RFK, which is what I wanted him to do, right? Wanted him to do that. If he announced that, it would have sent shockwaves through the system that I don't think he was willing or anyone is willing to deal with. So what he's done is he's just said enough. He's announced the launch of a strategic national reserve. He's announced how much he loves and respects Bitcoiners, and he loves and respects the idea of Bitcoin. And he's just dropped the bucket right there. He's just gone far enough without going too far and sounding like a crazy person like RFK. Because what happened to RFK? Everyone started looking at it going, wait, this is 8,000 days of purchasing, right? This is 8,000 days of purchasing that you're talking about. How's that even going to matter? Because you're only going to be president for 4 years, and you're talking about announcing 22 years of daily purchasing, right? It doesn't make any sense. He went just far enough, and now Cynthia Lummis has announced this bill, right? So you have a president that's aligned on creating a strategic national reserve. You then have a senator who's announced this bill, and now the institutional investors, which is the ones that Larry Fink advises, are going to be told this. By the way, that 200,000 Bitcoin that is in the National Reserve, that's never going to be sold now because that's going to be in the National Reserve, right? The 200,000 Bitcoin that America has seized, that is now going to be America's Bitcoin. So it is going to be a long-term good speech. It is not going to be a short-term good speech like what we thought was going to happen. But this speech is going to make institutions very comfortable. It may not make Bitcoiners very happy, but it's going to make institutions extremely comfortable. It is a thoughtful speech from the perspective of an institution. It is not a thoughtful speech from the perspective of the audience that he was talking to, which makes me think that whoever has helped him formulate this speech understands what institutions need to hear, which is Bitcoin's not going to be sold off by America. The president is pro-Bitcoin. We are moving forward. This is a development of a new industry, et cetera, et cetera. It's just comfortable enough to allow institutions to go, you know what, we need a 5 or 10% allocation. The more it looks like President Donald Trump's going to get reelected. It is perfectly calm. It is disappointing to the max for Bitcoiners, but it is perfectly calm for Bitcoin, and it's perfectly calm for institutions over the long term. That's what I think has happened here. We will not see the benefit of this speech for the next few weeks. It is not going to be a God candle speech. That's not happening, but it will be a good speech overall for Bitcoin from an institutional perspective. That's what I think has happened here. RFK stole the show, but President Donald Trump here is gonna seal the bag for institutions that want to get into Bitcoin. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was a little bit of BlackRock influence here, because this is what, if you're an institution, you don't want to hear that the president just jumped off the fucking cliff and said, we're gonna buy 4 million Bitcoin, for America, because I don't think he's going to announce a strategic reserve, because if you were China, you don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear from the United States, your number one arch nemesis and competitor, that they're about to buy 500 Bitcoin a day, because what the fuck are you going to do? You're going to start buying right now. Trump's not going to get into office, even if he is elected, until January. It doesn't make sense as a competitor for him to do that, right? What it makes sense for him to do is say, we need to look at building a strategic reserve. And that's pretty much what he did by saying, I'm going to take the 200,000 that we've seized and put it into our national stockpile of Bitcoin, right? I think it's a great speech. I think it's not a great speech for us who wanted to go to the fucking moon right now. It's not for that, right? Fumbled the fucking bag on that one. It's not exciting, but it's perfectly stable. It is perfectly designed and orchestrated for a long, drawn out Bitcoin battle that's going to happen for this election. That's my perspective on it. I don't think that this was a truly terrible tweet, terrible speech. I think it was I I think it was full on MAGA, and I can understand why the leftists are going to be disappointed by that. It was full on MAGA, let's go MAGA, 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 MAGA. I think it was a little bit tone deaf to the audience that he was speaking to, but I think overall he did really, really well. Just fucking disappointing because we're not going to see that God candle today. So I want to let the conversation develop. I'm happy that the Cynthia Lummis announcement has come. I'm going to go see it. So I want to go see what that's about, and I want to make comments on that. And then you need to subscribe to the channel to get, and so we can continue this conversation on what's actually going on here. But overall, I'm so happy that, look, take this away from this speech. Yes, it was disappointing. Yes, it was disappointing, but I want you to understand this. This is a historic moment. Imagine if this speech was just 1 year ago. Imagine if this speech was just 1 year ago, right? We'd all be fucking over the moon, right? It'd all be like we just took a ton of Viagra, okay? That's what would happen. But now we're here. Now we got all these politicians, because of the lobbies that are behind them, talking about Bitcoin. So this isn't and RFK fumbling, winning the bag, basically fumbled it for Trump because, he went there and basically said, this is what we're going to do. And it was too good, right? Trump has now come in with a much more stable speech. And I think this is going to be the win that we needed to see. So go. Take a breather, understand that this wasn't the God candle speech that we thought was going to happen, but understand that if you are truly pro-America, that's not the speech that you wanted to hear, because it would allow all these other nations to start front-running you. And the fact that he's made all of these announcements is very, very good. And now we're going to start seeing how this develops into the election and eventually when he becomes president. One thing I do know is that Donald Trump is now officially bowed down to Bitcoiners. The president of the United States as an office has bowed down to Bitcoiners. The industries that have the majority of the capital understand that this is a very, very important speech and very, very important asset for the presidency and for America. And we all can see clearly where this is going. So go look at that. I'll be back on later. These are my initial reactions to the speech. Terrible in the moment, amazing for the future. We'll talk to you later. I love you guys. Remember, there's always only 3 rules to Bitcoin. Step number 1, you buy Bitcoin. Step number 2, shut the fuck up. And step number 3, you get fabulously wealthy.